Summer feels like the season your solar system finally gets easy. It isn't, not even close. Here's a question worth asking. What if the exact conditions that should make your system perform best are actually the conditions working against it the hardest? Because that's exactly what's happening. The heat pouring onto your panels is quietly cutting their output. The same heat is aging your battery faster than you'd expect, and the equipment sitting between them, the part nobody thinks about, is throttling itself down at the worst possible moment. Most people never find any of this out, not because it's hidden, because almost nobody tests their system on the one day it actually matters. There's a real fix for all three of these problems, and it's simpler than you'd think. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to summer-proof a system most people don't realize is already working against them. If you want your off-grid setup to actually hold up when the heat hits hardest, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel breaks down. Let's start with the assumption almost everyone makes without ever questioning it. The assumption that summer is simply the good season for solar. It's an easy assumption to make. Longer days, more direct sunlight, less cloud cover in a lot of places. On paper, it looks like exactly the conditions a solar setup was built for. And in one narrow sense, that's true. There genuinely is more raw sunlight hitting your panels in summer than at almost any other point in the year. But raw sunlight and actual usable power are not the same thing. And that gap is exactly where this gets interesting. There's a reason this misconception is so common. Solar marketing almost always shows panels gleaming under a bright summer sky, because visually, that's exactly what sells the product. Nobody's showing you a data sheet buried in fine print, the one explaining exactly how much performance gets lost once panel temperature climbs past a certain point. Solar systems don't operate in isolation. They're a chain of parts, panels, batteries, and the electronics that manage them, and every single link in that chain reacts to heat differently. Some of those reactions genuinely help. A lot of them quietly work against you, in ways that don't show up until the system is actually under real load, on the one day you actually need it to perform. This is why so many off-grid systems that tested perfectly fine in spring or fall suddenly underperform the moment a real summer heat wave hits. Not because anything broke, because the entire system was quietly designed and tested under conditions that summer simply doesn't provide. So let's go through this properly, piece by piece, starting with the part almost everyone assumes benefits the most from summer sun. Here's the part that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it. Solar panels don't actually work better in extreme heat. In a lot of cases, they work measurably worse. This sounds backwards, so it's worth explaining exactly why it's true. A solar panel converts light into electricity, not heat into electricity. Sunlight is the fuel. Heat is actually a byproduct that gets in the way of the conversion process. Every solar panel has what's called a temperature rating, the specific temperature it was tested and rated at in a lab, usually somewhere close to a comfortable 77 degrees Fahrenheit. As the panel's actual surface temperature climbs above that rating, its efficiency drops in a fairly predictable, measurable way. And here's the part that catches people off guard. Panel surface temperature isn't the same as outside air temperature. A panel sitting in direct summer sun can reach a surface temperature dramatically higher than the air around it, sometimes by 50 degrees Fahrenheit or more, depending on mounting, airflow, and surface color. That means on the exact days with the most available sunlight, the panels themselves are often running hot enough to be operating well below their rated performance, even while producing more raw output than a cooler, cloudier day would allow. This is genuinely counterintuitive, so let's put it plainly. More sun does generally mean more power, but hotter panels mean less efficient power, and in peak summer, both of those effects are happening to your system at the exact same time, partially canceling each other out in a way most people never account for. If that surprised you, hit like. It tells me to keep going because the part of this system reacting worst to heat isn't even the panels. The practical impact of this shows up most clearly during the hottest part of the afternoon, exactly when people assume their system should be performing at its absolute peak. Instead, output often plateaus or even dips slightly during the hottest hours, then recovers as temperatures ease later in the day. The mistake almost everyone makes here is assuming their system's rated output number, the one printed on the panel or quoted by whoever installed it, holds steady in any sunny condition. That number is measured under specific lab conditions that summer heat routinely exceeds. A system rated to produce a certain output on paper can genuinely produce noticeably less during a real heat wave, not because anything is broken, but because the physics of the panel itself changes with temperature. None of this means solar stops working in summer. It clearly doesn't. It means the assumption that summer automatically means peak performance is exactly the kind of assumption that leaves people caught off guard the first time they actually need their system to perform at its stated capacity. The panels aren't the biggest heat problem in your system though. That title belongs to the battery. Batteries are chemical devices, and chemical reactions speed up as temperature rises. That might sound like it should be a good thing, faster reactions, more available power, but with batteries, faster chemical activity almost always means faster degradation, not better performance. Every type of battery has a comfortable operating temperature range where it performs safely and predictably. Push well above that range, and a few things start happening at once. The battery ages faster than its rated lifespan would suggest, losing real capacity permanently, not just temporarily. Charging becomes less efficient, meaning some of the power going in never actually gets stored. And in more extreme cases, especially with certain battery chemistries, excess heat during charging can create real safety risks, including excess gas buildup or, in rare cases, thermal events. This is exactly why battery manufacturers specify a maximum safe operating temperature, and why that number matters just as much as the battery's capacity rating. A battery bank installed in direct sun, in an uninsulated shed, or anywhere without real airflow can spend entire summer afternoons sitting well above that safe range, quietly losing lifespan every single day it happens. Here's the part that makes this especially dangerous for a grid-down scenario specifically. Battery degradation from heat isn't usually dramatic or obvious in the moment. It's gradual. A battery doesn't fail all at once from summer heat. It just quietly holds less charge than it used to, cycle after cycle, until the day someone actually needs its full rated capacity and discovers it isn't there anymore. The common mistake here is treating battery placement as an afterthought, tucking the battery bank wherever there's convenient space without considering that space's actual temperature throughout a full summer day. A battery sitting in a hot, poorly ventilated space isn't just inconvenient, it's actively shortening its own usable life every single day it sits there. There's a second layer to this that catches even careful people off guard. Charging behavior itself needs to change with temperature. Charging a hot battery the exact same way you'd charge a cool one can accelerate the exact degradation you're trying to avoid. Most quality charge controllers include temperature compensation for this reason, adjusting charging voltage based on real battery temperature, but only if that feature is actually configured correctly, which a lot of installations skip entirely. This is part of why experienced off-grid users treat battery placement as seriously as they treat panel placement, something a lot of newer setups overlook entirely. Shade, airflow, and distance from any additional heat sources all genuinely matter here, sometimes as much as the battery's actual specifications. Different battery chemistries handle this differently too. Lithium-based batteries generally tolerate heat somewhat better than older lead-acid designs, and often include built-in protection systems that automatically reduce charging or even disconnect the battery if temperatures climb into a genuinely unsafe range. Lead-acid batteries typically don't have this same built-in protection, which means the responsibility for keeping them in a safe range falls entirely on how and where the system is set up. So panels lose some efficiency in extreme heat, and batteries quietly lose real lifespan. There's still one more piece of this system reacting to summer heat, and it's the piece most people never think about at all. That third piece is the equipment sitting between your panels and your battery, and eventually between your battery and whatever you're actually trying to power. The inverter and the charge controller. These components are built from electronics, and electronics generate their own heat simply by operating on top of whatever heat is already in the surrounding environment. Manufacturers know this, which is why almost every inverter and charge controller comes with a spec called thermal derating. In plain terms, thermal derating means the device automatically reduces its own output once its internal temperature crosses a certain threshold, specifically to protect itself from damage. This is a genuinely reasonable safety feature. It's also exactly the kind of detail that gets buried in a spec sheet nobody reads until it becomes a real problem. Here's why this matters so much for a summer scenario specifically. The exact conditions most likely to push these components into D rating, high ambient temperature, direct sun exposure, and heavy continuous load, are also the exact conditions a real summer heat wave creates. This means the equipment is most likely to throttle itself down precisely during the moments you're asking the most of your entire system. Someone can own a system with plenty of panel capacity and a perfectly healthy battery and still see disappointing real-world output on the hottest days, simply because the inverter itself has quietly reduced what it's willing to output to protect its own internal components. The common mistake here is installing this equipment in whatever location is physically convenient, a garage, a shed, an enclosed cabinet, without considering how hot that specific space actually gets during real summer conditions. An inverter rated for a certain continuous output in a cool, ventilated test lab can behave very differently, sitting in a sealed enclosure baking in full sun all afternoon. Picture two nearly identical setups. One inverter sits inside a shaded, well-ventilated enclosure with airflow moving through it. The other sits inside a sealed metal box in direct afternoon sun. Both are rated for the exact same continuous output on paper. In practice, the second one will almost certainly derate its output earlier and more aggressively than the first, simply because its actual operating temperature climbs so much higher. Even though nothing about the internal electronics is any different between the two, This is exactly the kind of gap that stays invisible until someone actually monitors their system's real output during a genuine heat wave, rather than relying on the number printed on the box. A system can look perfectly fine on a mild spring afternoon and still underperform significantly the very first time real summer heat and real heavy load happen at the same time. So that's three separate parts of the same system, all reacting to heat in their own way, all working against peak performance at exactly the moment peak performance matters most. And there's one specific reason almost nobody catches this before it becomes a real problem. The reason almost nobody catches this in advance comes down to when systems typically get tested. Most off-grid systems get set up, checked, and fine-tuned during comfortable weather. Spring installation, fall maintenance checks, mild, pleasant days where testing the system is actually convenient to do. That timing makes complete sense from a practical standpoint. Nobody wants to be up on a roof or troubleshooting wiring during the hottest week of the year, but it creates a specific, predictable blind spot. The system gets verified as working under exactly the conditions it's least likely to face real stress, and almost never gets verified under the one condition that actually reveals every weakness at once: a genuine, sustained summer heat wave with real load on the system. This gap matters even more specifically for anyone treating their off-grid system as emergency backup rather than daily use power. A daily use system gets tested constantly, just through normal use, revealing problems relatively quickly. An emergency backup system can sit unused and untested for months at a time, meaning a heat-related weakness can remain completely invisible until the exact day it's needed most, which is precisely the worst possible time to discover it. None of the three problems covered so far are actually hard to fix. They just need to be tested for and planned around deliberately, instead of discovered by accident during an actual emergency. Tell me in the comments, honestly, when's the last time you actually tested your full system's output during a real hot summer afternoon? Not just check that it was turned on and running. So here's the real fix, the one this entire video has been building toward. It isn't one single trick. It's three specific adjustments, one for each part of the system, plus one habit that ties them all together. Start with the panels. The goal isn't to stop them from getting hot. That's largely unavoidable in direct summer sun. The goal is to reduce how much hotter they get than they need to. Proper airflow underneath the panels, even a few inches of clearance instead of a flush mount, allows heat to escape from the back of the panel instead of building up underneath it. This alone can meaningfully reduce panel operating temperature compared to a tightly mounted setup with no airflow at all. Next, the battery. The single biggest improvement most people can make is simply relocating the battery bank out of direct sun and into a shaded, ventilated space, ideally one that stays noticeably cooler than the hottest part of the day outside. If relocating isn't possible, basic shade structures and passive ventilation, even something as simple as vents that allow hot air to rise and escape, make a real difference. For anyone using lead-acid batteries specifically, checking that the charge controller's temperature compensation feature is actually enabled and correctly configured matters just as much as physical placement. Then the inverter and charge controller. Same principle as the battery, shade and airflow over sealed, direct sun enclosures. If the equipment is currently sitting in a sealed box baking in full sun, even switching to a ventilated enclosure or adding a simple shade cover can measurably reduce how often it throttles its own output during the hottest hours. And finally, the habit that actually catches all of this before it becomes a real problem. Test the full system, under real load, on one of the hottest days of the year, on purpose. Not a quick check that it's turned on, an actual test, running real appliances during the hottest part of the afternoon and watching what the system's real output looks like compared to what's printed on the label. This single habit is what separates people who discover these problems during a calm, controlled test, with time to fix them, from people who discover them for the first time during an actual emergency, with no time and no easy options left. It's worth putting real numbers on why this compounding effect matters so much. A panel running meaningfully hot might lose a modest percentage of its rated output. A battery pushed into an unsafe temperature range loses usable capacity on top of that. An inverter derating under heavy heat and load can cut available output further still. None of these numbers alone sounds catastrophic. Stacked together, on the exact same afternoon, the combined gap between rated capacity and real usable capacity can be dramatic, especially compared to how the same system performs on a mild, cool day. It's worth addressing an obvious question here. Doesn't more intense summer sun simply make up for all of this anyway? Sometimes partially. Longer days and stronger sun do offset some of the efficiency lost to heat, but that offset isn't guaranteed, and it isn't something to rely on blindly, especially during the exact kind of extended heat wave most likely to strain the actual power grid in the first place. Relying on raw sunlight to compensate for a system nobody has actually heat tested is exactly the kind of assumption that looks fine until the one day it doesn't. This connection matters more than it might first seem. Extended heat waves are already one of the more common triggers for real grid strain and real regional outages, as power demand for air conditioning spikes at the exact same time infrastructure is already under thermal stress of its own. That means the summer scenario covered in this video isn't a rare edge case. It's one of the more statistically likely times an off-grid system actually gets tested for real, which makes heat-proofing it in advance far more valuable than it might initially seem. Here's why this matters so specifically for a grid-down situation. In a real emergency, summer heat doesn't pause to be convenient. If the grid goes down during a heat wave, which is exactly the kind of scenario summer storms and heat stress create in the first place, every one of these three weaknesses shows up at exactly the same time, compounding each other instead of happening one at a time. A system that's been shade optimized, properly ventilated, and actually tested under real summer conditions doesn't have this problem. It performs close to what it's rated for, because every weak point has already been identified and addressed before it actually mattered. This is really the core idea behind everything covered in this video. Summer doesn't make an off-grid system easier, it tests every part of that system at once, in ways spring and fall simply don't. The systems that hold up aren't the ones with the most expensive components, they're the ones where someone actually understood how heat affects every single link in the chain, and built around that understanding instead of assuming more sunlight automatically means better performance. So to bring this all together, summer feels like the easy season, longer days, more sun, less to worry about. In reality, it's the season that quietly tests every single part of an off-grid system at once, the panels, the battery, and the equipment connecting them, all reacting to heat in ways that work against peak performance rather than toward it. None of these problems require an expensive system overhaul to fix. They require understanding where heat actually causes damage, adjusting placement and ventilation accordingly, and actually testing the full system under real summer conditions before an emergency forces that test to happen without warning. If this changed how you think about your own setup, there's a full breakdown waiting on exactly how to size a solar and battery system with these summer conditions already accounted for from the start. That video is linked right here, and it's the natural next step after this one.